No eggs. No eggs, yeah. Okay, so those are the smoked ones. So, okay, so hang on one second. 16 and 10 and 26. Is that what you wanted, the smoked?
No, they are not.
Those are smoked. It's the gray ones are.
Oh, you know the sign's backwards.
Oh, did they put it in backwards?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for noticing that.
I always say it because it's harder to read them. Okay, I'm ready for your turn now. Oh, okay.
And Jerry, we'll just kind of start from the beginning, if you will.
Sure.
You know, our first question is what is your background in agriculture, and how did you get into quote unquote sustainable agriculture?
Okay. Anyhow, my name is Jerry Rutiz, and this is our farm. We farm about 28 acres, and we're right adjacent to the community of Halcyon in the Arroyo Grande area. And I started, I guess, going back to growing up in Los Angeles area, and I decided I didn't want to stay down there, and whatever it would take, I wanted to get out of there. So I decided to study agriculture and came up to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I got a degree in crop science. And for the first few years, I worked for various farming companies in the Oxnard, Lompoc, Santa Maria area as a field supervisor. And then I eventually took a job as a produce broker. So I got a little bit of experience in growing, harvesting, and selling fresh produce. In 1981, I had the opportunity to take a piece of land here in Arroyo Grande, about 18 acres, and that had been farmed in apple trees, and they had bulldozed down the apple trees because they weren't doing very well. And so I came along and I said stupidly, I'll take the land, and it was piled, 6 feet high in debris. So I spent the first 3 or 4 months just burning and bulldozing and leveling and everything out. And then I started farming on my own, and started out with borrowed equipment that I would borrow or rent equipment from other farmers in the area to use, after hours and on weekends. And then after a few months, I was able to buy a second-hand tractor, and it was a good thing I didn't have a wife or family at the time, because I probably went for 2 years without making much of any money. But luckily I didn't go into much debt, and so if I was able to survive on little or nothing, just taking care of myself. And I tried farming what I had been taught at Cal Poly, conventional farming using pesticides, inorganic fertilizers, and marketing through conventional marketing avenues, where I would box up a truckload of my lettuce or peas or whatever I happen to be growing, and send it down to Los Angeles or send it up to San Francisco wholesale market, and just accept whatever price they wanted to give me. And that after a year or so of that, and not having a dime to my name, I decided this really wasn't going to work. And at the time, of all people, my mother was working for a direct marketing program through the state of California that was just brought into existence by the then Governor Jerry Brown.
And that was the late 80s?
This is the early 80s.
Okay, early 80s still.
His first term.
Oh, okay.
And she volunteered for some of the startups for the direct marketing, which was farmers markets down in Los Angeles. And she calls me up on one day and she says, I am volunteering at this farmers market that's just starting. I think you should bring some of your produce down. And I put her off for a few weeks, and then finally I said, okay, I'll bring down a pickup load. And it was a Santa Monica farmers market, which was just starting out then, and sold everything we had in a half hour. Next week I borrowed a bigger truck. It took 45 minutes to sell everything we had. And I'm thinking, as I'm driving back that evening, I got $300 in my pocket, which was the best I'd done for 2 years basically. And I'm thinking maybe there's something to this. So from that point on, and this is about 1983, I start gearing up towards direct marketing in farmers markets. So it was just a case of listening to what the customer wanted at the farmers markets. And first they said, yeah, we like your cabbage and your sugar peas and your lettuce, but can you grow tomatoes and sweet corn and cut flowers and herbs and all kinds of different things? So I slowly taught myself how to grow all these different things, and I was very successful at the markets because I was one of the first growers to bring in a wide diversity of product into the marketplace. And we started with one farmer's market, and then we added 2 or 3 up in San Luis Obispo County just as they were starting up. And we were doing 2 or 3 more down in Southern California. So at one point we were doing 6 markets a week. And I was being helped by my parents who had retired, and then eventually my kids, as they grew up, they helped out also at the farmers markets.
Was it difficult to find time to farm when you're doing all this farmers market? I mean, how is that possible?
I was on the road an awful lot.
Okay, I bet.
So that was challenging. I mean, I put in a lot of hours, but it was what needed to be done at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so slowly, people would ask me, grow this, grow that, and I would grow it. And then they would come up to me and say, well, do you use pesticides? And I would say, yeah, why shouldn't I be using pesticides? That's what they taught me in school. They taught us the only good bug is a dead bug.
Mm-hmm.
And people would say, well, we don't really want the pesticides. And I said, okay, fine, I won't use them. And so that took me a year or 2 to figure out how to grow things without using pesticides. And then they would say, well, you're the organic grower, aren't you, Jerry? And I would say, no, we're not organic. We don't use pesticides, but we do use inorganic fertilizers, which would be like, ammonium nitrate, something along that line. And they would say, well, why don't you just use manure? Do natural. I said, okay, I'll do that. And so that took a few more years to kind of learn how to do that. And so it was just that we grew what people wanted, what they asked for. They asked us not to use pesticides. They asked us to use natural fertilizers. And that's what, the direction that we went. And then eventually they would say, how about some cut flowers? And I said, well, learn how to grow cut flowers. And
got some beautiful ones here.
Yeah. And I think at one time in the late 90s, probably cut flowers was 60% of our business.
Wow.
It was a huge part of our business. And then right around the year 2000 or so, the restaurants decided that they wanted to buy from the farmers at the farmers market directly. And they would come to the farmers market and they would get a box of this and a box of that. And that was very, very lucrative for us. They didn't care about the price, really. They just wanted the quality and the consistency. And they wanted to be able to put Jerry's carrots on their menu or Jerry's tomatoes. Growing in Arroyo Grande, even though people down in LA probably had no idea where Arroyo Grande was, it sounded good to them that they could actually put a name and maybe a face to the carrots that they were eating on their plate for dinner.
Yes.
So the restaurants became a big part of it. And then a book came out by author Michael Pollan, and Omnivore Dilemma. And that was another big turning point, I think, for a lot of the consumers that are aware of what they're eating, in that he advocated know the farmer that feeds you, or shake the hand of the farmer that feeds you. And
in non-COVID times.
In non-COVID. This is just a little passing thing. It will be over.
Yes.
So that that came out in the early 2000s, and people became aware that they wanted to know where their food was actually coming from, who was actually growing it. And in the about that time, about 2001, 2002, I noticed that the farmers markets for us were not nearly as lucrative as they had been during the late 80s and 90s. There was a lot of competition among the growers. Everybody was growing the same thing at the farmers market and bringing it and doing a good job. And there were lots and lots of farmers markets. Every community wanted to have their own market. And for the farmers themselves who were, trying to farm, packing up their truck at, late in the evening, going down to a market and selling, and suddenly finding that they couldn't sell the whole truckload anymore. That it was they were spinning their wheels for not that much money, and I noticed that coming on. So I decided, hey, why don't I stop the idea of going to the people and have the people come to me. So in 2003 I was approached by the community of Halcyon and the community that directly surrounds my farm here, and they came to me and said, hey, Farmer Jerry, we know that you farm without pesticides and using organic farming practices. We have a 28-acre piece of land here that we'd like you to farm. And I kind of, oh, really? And I go and I talk to the farmer that is on here, because we are, in our little valley here, we all know each other, and we all know what each of the other farmer is doing, and nobody wants to step on the other one's toes. And I say to the other farmer, hey, what's going on? And he says, I don't know, this community is a bunch of wackos here. They don't want me farming. I've been farming here for 27 years, and I'm doing the same stuff I did 27 years ago. I'm not doing anything any better, any worse. And suddenly they tell me that I'm poisoning them. He was conventionally growing strawberries here, and strawberries are on the top list of things that take a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. So there's a lot of sprays that go on conventional strawberries. And he just said, I'm doing the same thing I was doing, 15, 20 years ago, and suddenly they're telling me that I'm making their kids sick and everything. And he just kind of said, here, Jerry, here's the keys to the gate. You take it. I don't want this place anymore, basically.
Yeah.
And I came in with the idea that I was going to farm it, being pesticide-free, using good sustainable practices, and that rather than to antagonize the neighbors, I wanted the neighbors to feel that I was their community farm. And so for the past 17 years, that's kind of been our goal, is to invite the community in to our farm. We have a produce stand on the farm that we've given up all the farmers markets now, so all of our produce is sold through our produce stand. We're open 5 days a week. Up until COVID hit in March, we had a pretty good lucrative restaurant business in our local county area here, but that's pretty much fallen away. We're starting to pick some restaurants back up again, but the restaurants were hit very hard by this. So we sell everything through our produce stand that we grow, and we've actually, since 2003, we've done very well. We've invited the community in. We do school tours, which we're doing today.
Thank you very much.
And mostly, they're for the elementary schools that are within walking distance. They would have customarily walked here with their kindergarten, first, second, third grade classes.
Cool.
And we would take them for a tour, and the kids would be able to come out and pick a strawberry and see how it's growing and eat it, and pick a carrot and wash it off and eat it right there in the field. And we'd go and we'd see the chickens, and we'd see the bees, and we'd see the monarch butterflies on the milkweed. And we would lead farm tours, and then the kids could pick out a pumpkin at the end of their tour, and they could take it back with them. And that was my connection, one of my connections to the community. And we'd have gardening clubs come out here. all kinds of organizations, and we would just open up the farm to them, saying this is where we can grow food. This is how we grow it, and it's no big secret. We're not doing anything horribly, bad. And so that's where we are kind of today. So just to go back to when COVID hit in March, we had no idea how it was going to really affect us, because obviously we couldn't have our farm stand open like we had been, that people would just come in and we would encourage the community to just hang out, and we'd have benches there for people to hang out with, and we'd have a pizza maker come in and make pizza once a month and sell his pizzas, and we'd have free roasted corn and everything. So everything was to bring the community in, and of course once COVID hit, we couldn't do that any longer. And so we, in the first 3 months of COVID, we probably reinvented ourselves 10 times. At first we said, okay, we'll have everything there, but people won't be able to touch anything. We'll serve them. And so we kind of had everything behind us, and they would say, we'd like a tomato, we'd like a bunch of carrots, we'd like a pound of apples, whatever the case was. And so we would get it for them. Now that was before, when COVID first started, the thought wasn't so much that the transmission was through the air. It was more touching. So we didn't want to let anybody touch anything.
Right.
Okay, nobody wore masks or anything.
Right.
And then if, a month or so later it comes out, the main transmission is through the air. So what do we do now? Okay, I wanted to keep my staff safe. I didn't want to expose them to people that could be infected. So we went 100% to what we call a CSA bag, community supported agriculture. So every day for 5 days a week, we would publish out on the internet, on a newsletter, what we were going to be putting in the bag that day. I'd have my crew harvest the stuff in the morning, the vegetables, pack them up, and then by noontime we'd have 200, 300 bags of produce packed up every day.
Awesome.
We'd put it out on a table. We put out a self-serve honor system that they would shove their money into a box. And so they would come, grab a bag, shove their money in a box and leave. We would never see them. We would have no contact with them. And, they would just take what it was that we had available that day in the bag, and that would be it. And people at that moment in time, this is in March and April, early May, they were scared to death to go into any buildings, into grocery stores. So this was kind of the perfect idea, that they could just pull into our parking lot, grab a bag and leave. They didn't have to have any contact with people. Well, it was the worst 2 months of my life, because that's not what I wanted to be doing.
Sure.
It was
like a drive-through.
Yeah, it was very stressful.
Yeah.
And you're looking at everybody that comes into the parking lot thinking, are you going to kill me? And it was horrible. So then we slowly started adding add-on items. So we still would have the bag every day, but then if you wanted to add on a basket of blueberries, you could grab a basket of blueberries, or some tomatoes, or a bunch of flowers, or something like that. So we would slowly add on things. So then that worked for a while, but then what we found is that the line would get very, very slow and cumbersome, and everybody had to keep their distance. So after a while, that really wasn't working very well either. So then we opened up the stand, and we have the tables. We have all the produce lined up, kind of in a linear line. And people just come in, and we ask them to wear masks for their safety and our safety, and they grab the produce that they want. You know, we have it all lined up. Most of it's bagged.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you really can't pick up and sniff a tomato or sneeze on a tomato and then put it back. If you want a tomato, you pick up a bag of tomatoes, you put it into your bag, you know, and then you go over to our checkout area, and I have my staff behind a plexiglass barrier, and you know, we tally them up, and it moves people through quite quickly. And that seems to be where we are this weekend.
All right. I had to reinvent yourself a few times there.
Yes.
Yeah. But so you got to be adaptable and just deal with the changes.
Yeah.
Sounds like
and so luckily, you know, none of my staff have gotten ill. And, you know, we have every morning when they come into work, before they clock in, they take their temperature and they record it, and they sanitize their hands, and we have masks for them. If they will wear them.
Sure.
In the field, it's kind of hard to do when it's warm and everything.
Totally, I bet.
But so far so good. We keep our fingers crossed that we can keep ourselves and our customers healthy and
That's
happy.
good. That sure is great produce.
So let's talk a little bit about farming.
Cool.
So we don't use any pesticides, period, at all. And a organic grower, there is a whole array of pesticides that they are allowed to use legally. And those are usually pesticides that are either biologically made, you know, like viruses or bacteria that are propagated, and then you would spray it on your plant, or they're elemental sulfur, which is a mine product which you can dust or spray onto your plant. So we don't use anything like that, just because I decided that I was the one, as a small grower, I was the one that would have to be spraying it, applying it to the plant, because I really couldn't hire anybody, and I really couldn't expect my workers to do it. And I didn't really want to be applying this stuff. So we just kind of said, once we moved to this property in 2003, I parked my spray rig and I said, we're done with it. We're just not going to do it. So we accomplish it by trying to grow things within their season, when they will grow best. We don't try to grow Brussels sprouts in the middle of summer when they're going to be full of bugs, and there's no way we can do it. We grow Brussels sprouts for the winter time, when there aren't going to be so many bugs around. We grow tomatoes in the summertime, when it's warmer and drier and better chance of having a nice tomato. So that's one thing. Growing within the season of the particular crop that you're trying to grow will help, so you don't have to spray so much. And then the other thing is crop rotations, so that if we have carrots planted in a field for 1 year, you know, one season, carrots, we'll make sure not to plant carrots there for 2 or 3 years again, because there will be carrot maggots that will accumulate in the soil after your first crop of carrots, that you have to let the soil rest and just to grow something else on it. And so that's called crop rotation. And we also use what we call a green manure cover crop, and we try to plant that once a year on each plot of ground. And that's a crop that we'll put in, and it will help to improve the fertility and the life of the soil. The microorganisms in the soil will get rejuvenated, and we'll till that back into the ground, and it's like a huge compost pile. You smell it, and all the microorganisms are happy, and then we'll plant a crop like corn or tomatoes or carrots on the ground next, and the following crop, what we call a cash crop, will be very healthy than if you didn't use this green manure cover crop. So, and then the main way that we do it is we're growing a very large diversity of crops at one time. As I said earlier, the farmer that was on this land before me, he grew one crop, strawberries. Okay, so if he had a insect or a disease infestation, you know, he was at risk of losing his entire crop. Okay. Whereas I do grow strawberries, but I also at the same time am growing probably 30 different other items at the exact same moment on the land. So very small, you know, small plots of lots of different things. I'm planting many, like broccoli, lettuce, cauliflower. I plant every 2 to 3 weeks, a new field, a new field, a new field, so that if one field gets into trouble with bugs or diseases, we might lose a field of broccoli or cauliflower because it'll get infested with aphids. But in the insect world and in the disease world, usually the insect life cycles are fairly fast, and you'll get a infestation, but then in 2 or 3 weeks down the road, the weather might change a little bit, and the bugs will almost disappear on their own without spraying at all. So we might lose a field of broccoli, but right next to it will be lettuce and tomatoes and corn that are not affected by the same bug or diseases that broccoli might be. And the next field of broccoli on the other side of the farm that's going to be ready in 3 weeks probably will not have the bug or the disease issues in it either, because it's fairly short-lived. So by doing a large diversity at any given time, yeah, we might be losing some items, you know, but we've got 28 other things that are growing out there that we can harvest that are going to be good, that are going to be just fine. And then the other way is by educating our customer that, hey, if there's a few holes in the leaves of the broccoli plant, not a big deal. You're not eating those leaves anyhow. You're eating the head of the broccoli, and there's no holes in that. So if there's a few issues, disease or insect issues, we can trim it away. Our sweet corn, it's impossible to grow sweet corn in our area here without having the corn earworm in the tip of the corn. We don't even worry about that anymore. We harvest it, we bring it in, we have a chopper, we chop off the tip of the ear of corn, and we sell it that way. The customers don't even notice that there's a problem, you know. It was like, oh, that's so nice of you to cut off the tip of the ear for us.
They appreciate it, probably.
They appreciate it. Yeah. So we just learned how to deal with you know, some insect issues, and our customer learned how to accept a few holes in the leaves. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I just realized that, you know, it doesn't need to be perfect. Blemishes are fine. Yeah. And it tastes the same or
I
better.
don't want to sell a piece of corn with 3 worms crawling all through it, and you got to eat around the worms to get your part. You know, I won't do that.
Yeah.
If it's just a matter of trimming off a little bit of it, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So we use, so that's pesticides. We use only organically approved fertilizers. So for us, that's mostly chicken manure and fish emulsion, liquid fish that we mostly use. And both of those items I look at, even though I don't produce those things right here on the farm, I look at them that if I didn't use them as a fertilizer, they would be a hazardous waste material that the fish processing facilities or the chicken houses would have to try to deal with. And by farmers like myself saying, yes, we would like to have those byproducts as our fertilizer, then it's a win-win situation for everybody. And they're very good fertilizers.
Right.
And so those are the fertilizers that we mostly use. And then we're not certified organic. Everything we do out here would allow us to be certified organic. Nothing is contrary to that, except the certification process is a lot of record keeping, which I don't really like to do record keeping, and it is paying fees to the certifying organization and to the state to have the certified organic stamp on your box. okay, which is all good, but I don't really need it for our area here, because we're selling everything directly to the customer at our produce stand. And anytime the customer wants to come out here, I will show them around the farm, and I'll show them, you know, we're not spraying anything. There are bugs out here. Here's the chicken manure, the sacks of chicken manure. Here's the fish emulsion. This is what we're doing. And I can show them. If I was shipping my produce back to New York or Canada, and the consumer back there didn't know Jerry, didn't know Jerry's farm, they're going to want to see a certified organic stamp on that box or on the head of lettuce or whatever the case is going to be. And they want to know where it's coming from. But in my case, I don't really need to do that. I can just show the community, you know, what we're doing out here on the farm. So that's why we're not certified organic.
Cool. A lot less hassle for you, it sounds
is.
like, and less money.
Yeah, less expenses.
Yeah, definitely. Something else you mentioned briefly was the CSA. Could you just expand on that just a little bit more, Jerry, and what the CSA does and how you use it?
Well, okay, a true CSA, as conceived 30 years or so ago, was where it was usually be a small farmer who didn't have much capitalization, so didn't have much money, and rather than for that farmer to go out and borrow money from the bank, who probably didn't want to lend him money anyhow, he would go to his community and he would say, listen, I will grow you guys fruits and vegetables, and if you buy into my CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, and you give me $500 up front in February of each year, and he will sell shares of his harvest. So if he sells 100 shares to 100 different families for $500 each, you know, he's going to have that money up front to buy his seed and his fertilizer and his tractor fuel at the beginning of the season. And then when harvest time comes around and he's sold, you know, 100 shares or 200 shares, he'll go out and he'll harvest everything he has that week, divide it into all those different shares, and each family who bought into his program back in February gets to come to his farm each week and get their share of the produce. And whether that share could be very good. I mean, maybe the farmer has a bumper crop of tomatoes and everybody gets 3 lugs of tomatoes every week for 4 weeks.
How much is a lug, Jerry?
Usually about 30 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, because that's their share of his crop.
Yes.
Conversely, if come July and he's all ready to harvest his tomato crop, and a hailstorm comes over and wipes out his tomato crop, which doesn't happen too often here in California, but in other parts of the country it happens way too often. And these people are all excited that they're going to have all these canning tomatoes, and he says, sorry, the tomato crop is gone. I'll give you all the chard and kale that you want. You know, people don't want chard and kale. But so that was the true idea of a CSA, is that you would get a share of the farmer's harvest each week, and you would take it home and you would try to figure out what to do with it. Okay, but of late, most of the farmers have gone to more of a modified program where, first of all, the families, the consumer does not pay up front. They might pay, in my case, they just pay each week when they want a bag of produce, or they might pay on a monthly basis, and they can opt in or out of the box or the bag of produce each week if they want to. They don't have to take it. So if they decide they want to go away for 3 weeks during the summer, they don't have to give their share to their neighbor next door. they can just call me up and say, we don't want anything for a few weeks, we're going to be away. And okay, fine. And then so that's what most of the farmers have gone to more so. And that's we still call it a CSA, but it's not really the true intent of a CSA. At that point, you're really not taking the risk along with the farmer. The original intent was the consumer is taking the risk with the farmer, but the consumer could benefit because he's willing to take on that risk. So he might benefit that he's going to get a whole lot of peaches or tomatoes or corn, but he also is taking the risk that if the crop is a failure, he gets little or nothing out of it. So what we found is that the consumer really doesn't want that.
Yeah.
They kind of want they want to know the farmer, and they want to get fresh produce, but they don't really want to take the risk, and they really don't want to have a long-term commitment.
Yeah, one question I've always meant to ask you is that, like today I'm looking at your CSA box list, and that's an impressive amount that you put in there. I mean, are you really making money on the CSA box, or you kind of break even on that? Or
we make money.
You don't have to answer that question if you don't want to.
Yeah,
but
we make money on it. I mean, we sell our produce bag or box for $20.
Yeah.
And we normally will put about 10 items in there. And I guess I value each item at $2 to $3 each item. So really there is extra labor in putting it together, but then you get people that will give you $20 straight off the bat for it. And so it's a way of bringing people in. Most people that buy our CSA box, they'll also buy other things from us. They might pick up a bouquet of flowers. They might pick up, a basket or two of strawberries or blackberries in addition. So it's one more way of selling our produce. I mean, it helps us move a lot of produce. If I go out into my field and I see, oh my gosh, I got a lot of carrots that I need to move this week, I can put carrots in our CSA and move a couple of hundred bunches of carrots at a click of a finger. So it's a way of moving product when we need to move it. Cool.
That's always impressive how much is in there, and literally it's like more than we could eat in a week a lot of times. And then one of my favorite things is there's always something unusual in there that you make us try. And that's fantastic.
I try.
I love that.
But there's a lot of people that don't quite have your sentiments. And,
like kohlrabi and jicama. Man, it's great stuff though.
So what we tend to find, at least in the past, is if I put something like kohlrabi or kale or fennel or chard, things that are really easy to prepare, and I do give people very simple recipes of how to prepare it. Not difficult. Just chop up everything and put it in a stir fry. Everything goes in there. But whenever I put fennel in the box, I can always see our sales go down about 20%.
Are you serious?
Without fail. Whereas if all I do is put potatoes and carrots and strawberries and lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers, if I were to repeat that every week, I think people would be perfully happy, except for you, Steve.
Yeah, no, I love the unusual stuff. Yeah, I'd never had jicama before you guys had it, and that's like one of my favorite vegetables now. I mean, I love that stuff.
Well, I think one thing that's fun here is that most of the things that we sell we'll harvest in the morning, you buy it in the afternoon, and you're eating it that night or the next night. So it's not that our jicama might be any necessarily better jicama or worse jicama than what you're going to buy in the store, but it's definitely fresher. So it's going to have more flavor, and really, what's the point of eating if you're not enjoying your food? So we try to make things fresh and tasty, so that when a family sits down to eat it, the kids are going to want to eat what's put in front of them. I mean, I grew up dreading vegetable larvae.
All right, so what are you growing here, Jerry?
This is narrow leaf milkweed. otherwise known as Asclepia. And this is the good kind of milkweed for the monarch butterfly larva to feed on. And here you can kind of see one of them hanging out there. So that's going to, after a couple of weeks of feeding, he'll turn into a chrysalis or a pupa, and he'll hang on the milkweed for about 3 weeks or so, and then hatch out into a mature adult butterfly. The butterfly will fly around, and it will drink up the pollen, the nectar from the flowers, and then it will search out this particular kind of milkweed and lay its eggs on it. And you will have, starting in early summer, each generation will go from egg to mature butterfly in about a month. And so you'll have about 3 generations in our area here before the fall comes around. And then in the fall, the butterflies that hatch out, they sense that the weather is changing, and they will leave the milkweed. They won't lay their eggs. They shouldn't lay their eggs anymore here is the idea. And this particular kind of milkweed going into late fall will actually go dormant. So there won't be anything for them to lay their eggs onto. And then they will migrate. Butterflies from here can go down to Southern California, maybe Mexico, and those butterflies will actually live for 4 to 5 to 6 months as an adult, and then they'll migrate back up to here in the springtime and go through their life cycle where they will come back to our area, look for the milkweed growing, lay their eggs here, and then shortly after they would lay their eggs, they will die, and then you'll start a whole another generation. And so it's kind of interesting that the generations of monarchs that will happen in the summer, the butterflies will not last more than a couple of weeks, and that's their whole lifespan. Once they become an adult, they'll lay their eggs, do a little bit of feeding, and then they die. Whereas the same monarchs that are born in the late fall from the last generation will last for 5 or 6 months.
That's really cool.
So they kind of know what they're doing, I guess.
Yes, they do.
So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we provide them with habitat that they can lay their eggs in, and the summer generations can flourish so that they will have a good population come the fall to migrate and to sustain themselves through the winter.
Right, because the larvae only eat milkweed.
Yeah.
And
there are other kinds of milkweed that sometimes you can buy, and they are more of a milkweed that will last throughout the year, and that will really screw up the generations of monarchs, because in order for them to survive, they have to migrate, they have to leave the area. And if these adults butterflies that come out in the fall, if they can find milkweed that looks presentable to them to lay their eggs, they'll lay their eggs, but those eggs will not flourish. They'll get diseased. The larva will get diseased in the winter time, and so that's part of our problem, in that we've brought in invasive species of milkweed that really don't work for the monarchs. It is very disruptive to them. So if people do have the milkweed in their yard, you want to make sure it's this native, it's called narrow leaf milkweed. And this is what the flower looks like here.
Cool. I saw some bees on it too, so it helps with pollination of the other crops and things too, I'm sure.
The bees love it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, so we cruise throughout their farm here, do a little tour, and
we have rosemary here.
And is that ornamental, or do you cut that?
Yeah.
You do cut it and sell it?
Cut it and sell it.
And also that's a attractant for bees too.
Yes, it has to be a small blue flower, which bees really love. And here we have our pumpkin field. And
All
you
right.
can see all the little orange flags out here.
Yes.
And what the orange flags are is last week we had the our customers come in, and if you can see here, they etched their names into the pumpkin, into the growing pumpkin. And then this pumpkin will probably get 2 or 3 times as big as it is now, and then eventually turn orange come October, and then they'll come back and they'll get their pumpkin with their name written on it.
Cool. I see you have several hundred flags out here.
Yeah, actually it was pretty
That's fantastic.
successful.
Yeah, I remember doing that when I lived here.
Again, it's something to bring the community to the farm.
Yes.
Okay. And today we have our blackberry fields that are you-picked blackberries, so people can come out and pick themselves as many blackberries as they want.
So I gotta ask, I mean, do you really weigh the kids before and after?
If they have blackberry juice dripping off their lips, yes.
Okay.
No, again, this is not a money maker per se for us, but again, it's a way to bring the community to the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So that hopefully they'll maybe purchase other things.
Yeah.
From us. Yeah. Little side note on blackberries, we talk about pests and we don't do any spraying, but there is a small little fruit fly that usually in the later part of the summer, early fall, becomes very prevalent out here. And the fruit fly comes along, lays their eggs in the ripening blackberries on them, and the larva will hatch out in a couple of days, and they kind of wiggle around inside the blackberry, and they'll eventually mature and drop down into the ground and pupate and then turn into the next generation fruit fly.
Okay.
Well, the problem arises when they come out here and they are picking their blackberries, and they pick maybe blackberries that are a little bit overripe and might have some larvae in them. And then they take them home and they put them on their counter in their kitchen overnight, thinking they're going to have blackberries in their cereal the next morning. And by the next morning, the little larvae hatch out, and they're crawling all around on their counter and such, and it's not very appealing to people. So what I tell people to do is, yes, you could have some larvae in there. It is possible. As soon as you get your berries home, put them in the refrigerator. That will stop any development. The larvae will not be active then, and when you're ready to eat them, take them out, wash them off, eat them. The little larvae, if they're in there, they won't hurt you, you know, or freeze them or cook them or whatever you want to do. That will kill them. But every year we always get people writing me on email, my kitchen is full of these little white squiggly things. What happened?
You should tell them it's extra protein.
Yes. I said, welcome to organic farming.
Yes. Cool. All right, we got some tomatoes over here.
Yeah.
All right. Are these just coming into?
Just coming in. Yeah. These
Okay.
are some of these are the Roma type tomatoes for paste.
Cool.
And this is our flower project here. And about 25% of the farm is in projects for my employees. And I give the flowers to one of the fellas, and he does, he decides what he's going to plant each year, and then he'll grow them and harvest them, in the after hours and on weekends when he's not working for me. And then he'll give them to me, and we'll sell them at the stand, and I'll give him the money. So cool. A lot of them are earning more money at that than they are actually at working.
Great. It's a bonus though,
It's
right?
a bonus,
I mean,
yeah. And they really, if you notice, the fields are very clean of their projects.
Okay.
Whereas whereas the regular farm fields, we don't get around to weeding them quite as often as we should.
I guess we didn't cover that before, was about the weeds and how do you deal with weeds out on the farm exactly?
Well, we can cultivate them out. Once they start growing, we have tractors that will cultivate them.
That just means plow them out?
Well, to cut them, you have the plant will be growing hopefully in a straight row down the center of the bed.
Something like this.
And then, and then the tractor will come in and it will cut away all the weeds except for in the plant line.
Okay.
And this is a good example of drip irrigation. So this is one way that we irrigate. We run this drip tubing all the way down the row, and then the water will just come out every 8 inches. It will drip out of the drip tube, and it will drop right in the plant row where the plant is growing. So basically, where the plant is not growing, you know, in the furrow in the walkway here, we're not watering it. So this saves probably about 30-40% on water because we're just putting exactly where the plant needs it, rather than the other way that we grow things like carrots and spinach and things like that is we will use sprinklers that will water a whole big area at one time, and that uses more water, but drip tape is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, it's great. You save water, but it's a bit more labor, and then every year we have to take a big load of drip tape to dump, and unfortunately in this day and age they can't really recycle it very well because bottom line, oil is too cheap, and so there's not an incentive for them to go to the trouble to clean it and to try to recycle it into something.
Just cheaper to make it from scratch.
Yeah, it's cheaper. I mean, anytime that oil is, below $75-80 a barrel, recycling of products like this it doesn't pay from a monetary point of view, which is too bad.
So will you have to come in here and hand weed this in
so
with
we'll
a hoe
come
or
in
something?
with hose and just knock out the weeds. This is a zucchini field here.
Zucchini, okay.
So we'll knock out the weeds, hopefully not the zucchini plants, and then it will be good.
At one point, years back maybe, you were talking about actually using a kind of a blowtorch to kill the weeds at first. Do you still do that?
That's one way that we do it.
Okay.
And, basically what we do there is we'll prepare the ground and we'll plant the seed. Let's say a carrot seed. And a carrot seed will take in the summertime about 10 days to germinate, 10 to 12 days to come up. Okay. On day 9, right before that carrot seed, the plant comes up, we'll go in and there will be lots of weeds that are growing because we've been sprinklering it several times to germinate the carrot seed. Okay. And so a lot of weeds have come up, and we can go in with a blowtorch, is a propane torch, and mount it on the back of a tractor, and we'll basically fry all the little weed seedlings that have come up on that bed. But the carrots haven't come up quite yet.
Cool.
And so, and then a day or two later, when the carrots emerge their little leaves out of the ground, they look around and there's no weeds around because we just kind of got rid of all the weeds.
That's pretty cool.
So with some crops, we can do things like that.
That's cool. Wow, dang it! I had visions of you out here with a flamethrower, Jerry. That sounds much better.
So here's eggplant.
The purple here is eggplant?
Purple is eggplant.
Okay.
And we had, up until about 10 days ago, we had a very cool summer out here. And the eggplant plants are growing fine, but they weren't setting any fruit because it was too cold at night. Okay. So last week, it started getting warmer, and all of a sudden, we're picking eggplant.
Oh, good. Here's the blooms here, huh?
So here you can see an eggplant. just starting here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, cool. How long will that take to get to be harvestable size?
Actually, in a week that will be
No
marketable size. Yeah, they grow really fast.
Very cool. And it's like a cantaloupe here?
Yeah, these are cantaloupes.
I didn't know you could grow cantaloupe here.
Yeah, we can. They're really good.
Okay, cool. I have to get,
Cantaloupes, and we have watermelons.
have to get one.
Going.
Ooh. Oh, this is more
More eggplant.
more eggplant, just different variety, huh?
Yeah, different varieties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of the end of your tomatoes here, or are you still harvesting?
These are kind of the end of a field here. So actually we're picking these now. Again, this is one of my employees' projects, and they've gotten a little bit soft. So we pick them and we sell them for like $5 for a 5-pound bag
Oh, nice.
of sauce tomatoes, and people just gobble them up.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's about the right amount if somebody wants to make up a pot of sauce,
Uh-huh.
and they can do that at a good price. Yeah.
Cool. Same kind of blackberries over here?
Yeah,
Okay.
blackberries here.
Or blackberries.
And these are called primal cane blackberries, and it's kind of a new breeding program out of the University of Arkansas. So they call them Prime Arc 45, and they're made that you will get flowers and fruit off of the same year growth. So if you have the cane growing in starting usually in March, the cane will grow up, and all the growth that you see here is just since March of this year.
Wow.
And you'll get flowers and you'll get fruit that summer and that fall, whereas conventionally growing blackberries, up until they came out with this variety, you had to grow the entire plant and keep the cane from the year before, and that cane, which would be a year old, would give you the fruit and the flowers and the fruit. So you'd have to have basically a 2-year-old cane to get fruit. This you can get fruit off of less than 1-year-old cane.
And do you mow these down every year?
We mow these down. So we take down the string. We mow them down to nothing, down to the ground level, and then they'll sprout back up again. We'll give them a good fertilizer, and they'll sprout back up and grow like this.
And that really keeps the disease or pest down, or what?
It keeps the pests down because it doesn't let the pests overwinter. If I can get rid of all the leaf, all the stems, and plow them, into the ground so they're gone, then we can break the life cycle of a lot of the destructive insects that would be out there, and diseases. So that's one way that this variety has worked out very well for us. Cool. And when the plant breeder, this is not a GMO or anything. We don't grow any genetically modified. This is just a plant selection that he found. And when he originally thought that this would be a good variety, he bred it to be used in the northern climates, where you would have a very cold winter that would kill the canes that would be above ground during the winter. So in this way, the farmer could mow it all down in the fall and put a mulch over the roots, and even if the ground froze, it would be okay. And then in the springtime, when the snow would be gone, the plant would sprout back up, and he would have berries to pick that summer and fall.
Cool.
So it was it wasn't even intended for California, but it's worked out really well for us, especially in a non-spray, non-pesticide situation, because we can break the life cycles of some of the pests.
Yeah. Cool. So getting ready to plant something over here, it looks like?
Yeah, so this will be, the ground is getting ready here we'll be planting peas here next month.
Sugar snaps?
Sugar snaps and the English shelling peas.
Okay. Cool. And it's like a onion or garlic over here?
That's a leek, an old
leek
field. So everything else has gone around it. So what I did is to water that, I strung a drip irrigation line
Oh,
from a
okay.
valve over here just to that one row. And so we can water it and keep it alive and keep it going.
So some of these fields that you leave fallow, that's just part of your rotation
It
plan?
is really, I don't like to leave things fallow. If you were to come out here in another 2 months, you would see no fallow ground.
Okay.
You would see in another 2-3 weeks, all these fields will be either planted with, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, something like that for the winter time,
Mhm.
or most of them will be planted into cover crop, and that will overwinter. I don't really want to plant the cover crop until about the middle of September because number one, it takes a lot of water and it's just kind of a waste of water if
Sure.
we have to be watering it all the time. So we try to plan it that we can plant these large fields in cover crop about mid-September. Maybe we'll water them once or twice, and then hopefully it will start raining, and the rain will carry it all the way through the winter into the spring as a cover crop.
Cool.
Whereas if we planted it early, we'd have to be sprinklering it every week,
Okay.
and using a lot of water.
Now, would you qualify that cover crop as part of how you get fertilizer into the ground?
Yeah,
here?
because it's a legume cover crop, so legumes will fix nitrogen out of the air and it'll put them into the ground, into the stems and the leaves and the roots of the particular plant. And so when we incorporate that cover crop back into the ground, it's like a big compost pile.
Cool.
And it's adding a lot of nitrogen, a lot of organic matter.
Cool. I think that might be my.
So this is asparagus.
Okay.
And what we call this is it's in fern stage right now, and this is where we would not be cutting it now, but you can kind of see, if we look in here, maybe something that would have looked like an asparagus spear, and they come up from the root, and then if you don't cut them, they will form a fern like this. And what this fern is doing is it's providing a lot of energy to go back down into the root. So this field, come late fall, the leaves, the top of the plant will kind of dry up naturally as the weather gets colder and shorter days. And then we'll go in here and chop this, and again give it a good fertilizer, have it go through the winter time, and then usually about mid-February or so, when the days start to get longer and the weather starts to warm up a little bit, the plant senses that and it starts sending up spears after spears after spears of asparagus. I mean, sometimes you got to come in here and cut every day.
Wow.
Because the plant is growing so fast, and that's where you get your spears from, that we eat. And then we'll cut that maybe for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we stop cutting it, and then we're done with it for the year, and then we let the spears mature out, go to fern, and this replenishes the root of the plant so that next February it can do it all over again.
Right. So this is a perennial type of a crop,
It's
correct?
definitely a perennial.
And how long have you had this in this particular area?
This has been here. This is coming on its second year.
Okay.
And this is third year.
Okay.
These are a little bit larger plants.
Yeah.
And asparagus, should last anywhere from 6 to 10 years.
Wow.
In our area here.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good crop to grow. You like that one, I bet.
Yeah.
Sometimes?
I mean, I like to eat asparagus, but again, you're doing a lot of work. We're watering it, we're pulling weeds out for 9 months out of the year and not really getting any benefit from it.
Okay, sure.
And then in the early spring, we can harvest it for 6 or 8 weeks.
Okay.
So we have to take care of the plant the rest of the time.
So that's why it's so expensive.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But it's good.
Here's our strawberry crop. So we have 2 fields of strawberries. These are what they call fall planted. So these were planted back last October, the end of October. And they produce their fruit mainly in March, April, May, June.
Okay.
And then this particular variety is pretty much done. You know, the berries are going to get small. What it's trying to do right now is it's trying to reproduce itself with these little runners. So you could, if somebody wanted to, you could clip these runners off here and replant that, and each place here would be a new plant. This would be a new plant if you planted it. Okay. We don't do that because we just look at these plants as annuals, that we plant them, you know, in the late fall. We'll harvest them in late, you know, in spring into early summer, and then we're pretty much done with them.
Okay.
Because we don't really want to have the plants stay here, because again, the insects and the diseases will tend to build up on them because we're not spraying them. So you'll tend to get a lot of mite issues that will really build up to a level if we try to carry them over into a second season. In other areas of the country where you have a hard winter, they grow different varieties, but so then in the fall they'll go ahead and mow these down and they'll be covered with snow. And then in the spring the same plant will sprout back up again and they'll have strawberries. But in coastal California, it's better just to replant each year with new plants.
Okay.
So
cool.
So we have these.
It's a big patch of them.
Yeah. And then over there we have what we call our summer planted berries, and those are berries that we planted in May, and those are the main ones that we're harvesting right now.
Okay.
And they will produce through the fall into the early winter if it doesn't get too cold.
Okay. Have you stopped watering these here?
You can see right to here, we're still watering here, and these
it's
tend to have more.
greener.
This is a different variety over here. So this variety kind of shut down early. This variety is very strong, what they call short day variety, so that it will produce well in short day, but once you get to longer days, it wants to go just vegetative. So that's why anything after about you know, the beginning of July, this variety doesn't produce much. But these varieties are what they call day neutral varieties. So these don't really care what the day length is. So they will produce a little bit of fruit all the way through the summer, but not a lot of fruit. Yeah, most of the fruit we're getting is from our other field right there.
Cool. I got some lettuces over here.
This is bok choy.
Bok choy here.
Bok choy, lettuce. And this is actually a field that a friend of mine a few years ago during the drought, he ran out of water on his home ranch, and so I welcomed him to come here, and he's never left.
Jalapenos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jalapenos. Yeah.
Cool.
So this is kind of his little project here.
Okay.
And here, some more tomatoes. Again, you can see we have things scattered kind of all over, seemingly haphazard, but not really.
It's all in
in
your mind.
There is a reason. Up above us that we just walked by is Owl Box. We definitely have owls living up there in the past. I don't think there's anybody in there right now. Usually they'll come up there and have their chicks in the springtime, and then usually this time of the year they're gone. Here's late onion crop here, and leeks and celery root or celerac. Regular celery here. Here's some broccoli that will be coming up into production soon. Cauliflower, lettuces, different color lettuces. We have some beets here. Here's a case when the bugs kind of got the best of us. This is a problem. We get it every once in a while. You got leaf miner, which is a little worm little caterpillar that goes into the leaf, in the middle of the leaf, causes this. And then once it gets in there, then mildew also gets in there and causes problems. So the leaves aren't as nice as you'd like them to be, but we can still, the root, which is what most people eat, we can still market that.
The worm is microscopic then to get inside the leaf there?
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
You need a hand lens to see it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. I never would have guessed that was a worm.
Carrots, leeks, celery, more broccoli, more cauliflower. This time of the year, things are, at least in my fields, a bit more weedy than we'd like them to be. The old adage is there's usually about 1 week at the beginning of March when we're actually caught up with everything. And from then on, it's just, you know, we're behind. So the weeds are growing, and you know, I say to myself, okay, our #1 priority each morning is to harvest what we have so we can sell it, so we can pay the bills. The next priority is to plant, because if we don't plant all the time, we have nothing to harvest in 3 or 4 or 5 months down the road. The next thing is to water and fertilize, because if we don't water and fertilize, the plants will not grow well. The last thing is to pull the weeds.
Okay. Last priority.
Last priority, because the plant, they won't be as productive or healthy with all the weeds, but they still will grow. So we try to make time to pull the weeds. But that's, you know.
So I was curious, looking at your harvesting some carrots in this row right here. Some of these carrots were left behind, most because they were too small, or they had some blemishes.
They had blemishes. They probably might have had a maggot in them or something that the guy saw, and they would just leave them aside. Cool. So, I mean, even in a good carrot field with us, maybe 9 out of 10 carrots are going to be good. 1 out of 10 going to have some problems. Maggot, misshapen, too small, too big, something like that, and the guys will just leave it behind.
And it's just composting there in the process.
It doesn't really cause any problems. Here's some Italian flat leaf parsley. A little bit too much of it for this year. And some kale. We call it the Toscano or Cavallonero kale.
Yeah, that's some good looking kale. I like kale, Jerry, so I appreciate you growing it.
And red cabbage, green cabbage, old fennel field here, and old broccoli field. And I sometimes leave the fields a little bit longer than I should, because as you can see, if you do a close-up on those yellow flowers, the bees enjoy it immensely. They really like the brassica, the broccoli flowers. So I'll leave it for an extra week or 2 and let the bees have a good time in there.
And you have somebody that has bees on the property?
Yeah, they're over there.
Okay. And do you find that helps? I mean, do any of your crops require pollination, or
a lot of them are helped by the pollination. All the berries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, they can produce berries without bees for pollination, but your yields are vastly increased by having pollinators out there. The squash really needs some kind of pollination to work, the squash and the pumpkins. You know, something like broccoli, no, because I'm not growing broccoli to try to make a seed or try to make a flower. So it really doesn't matter. You know, we're growing the broccoli for immature flower head, and whether there are bees around or not, it's not going to affect the broccoli that we harvest and sell. But overall, we like the bees.
Yes, definitely.
And we sell their honey at the stand from that's collected from here.
Cool.
These are sweet potatoes.
Oh, cool.
And again, as you can see clearly, this is not my field.
Because there's no weeds.
There's no weeds. The guys come out here every evening and they do a really good job of pulling the weeds. And sweet potatoes, they're kind of a hard thing to grow. Around here, you know, over in the Central Valley, around Stockton and things like that, they grow like weeds. They're very easy to grow. But here we really don't get quite enough heat for them to do well. Now, I think if we continue to get a warm fall, like it looks like we are now, you know, I think we could have a really good crop of sweet potato. So they grow these my employees doing this again. So they grow the conventional orange one, and they grow a purple one, and they grow a white one.
Cool.
And they're all really tasty.
Nice.
So we'll have those harvesting, you know, usually mid-October or so. They'll
Okay.
start those. Here are cucumbers, and cucumbers are kind of getting to the end of this field. But he's picked, again, this is one of my workers' project fields, and he's picked a lot of cucumbers out of here.
That's cool. So I oftentimes see these, you know, this plastic fencing or whatever, Jerry. What is the
It's mostly for windbreak.
windbreak? Okay,
To try to slow the wind down.
That's what I assumed.
What
so.
he was finding, especially in the early, late spring, early summer, we'd get a lot of wind coming off the ocean, and it would blow the sand up against the plants, and it would act like sandpaper.
Oh, no kidding.
And hurt, you know, scar the plant, scar the cucumber that was growing.
Oh.
So by putting up these little windbreaks, he felt that he would keep the sand from blowing quite so much.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, you see some fields where they just surround the whole field
Yeah.
with it and things like that. So I was
Yeah, to keep
curious.
the wind and the dust out of strawberry fields, to keep people out also.
Yeah.
Here is our, as you can tell, again, a nice clean field here. So this is jicama. Here. This is probably your largest field of jicama in this part of the state, because it's not really grown commercially. Most of the jicama you get in the store is from Mexico, but he grows it, does a really good job.
Some beans here?
Yeah, these are beans mostly for his family. So the original intent was that I would give the guys, the employees, small plots of land to grow food for their families. You know, corn and beans and melons and things like that. They would like to have to supplement for their families. And then, you know, they would come up to me and say, "Gee, Jerry, you're not growing jicama. How about we grow some jicama and you try to sell it at the stand, or the sweet potatoes or cucumbers or whatever." And I say, "Sure, go ahead and grow it and we'll try to sell it." And, you know, the jicama has been a good seller at the stand.
Is that jicama back in the corner there too?
That's more sweet potatoes.
More sweet potatoes. Oh, okay.
And then here's our butternut squash this year. See some of it in the field there. So it's maturing, and we'll be harvesting this for the fall. That still has a month or so before we'd even look at it.
Okay.
Because you want this kind of squash to kind of sit around. It's actually best if you can have a first frost or something like that, and that will sweeten it up. And then we would cut it and put it in boxes and store it, and then we would have it all winter long.
Cool. Is it done growing in size? Is it about the,
No, it'll continue to grow.
Okay.
It'll get a bit bigger. There's a horse. Romeo.
This is Romeo.
This is Romeo.
All right. Cool. Well, that's about it. You got corn back here, it looks like.
Yeah, so this is corn here. And you want to see a worm?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Some kind of worm here.
It's always a good way to tell if your corn's organic or not, right? If it's more sustainable. It's got...
These were all our cornfields that we've gone through this year already.
Oh, okay.
So we'll harvest from about 8 to 10 cornfields every year.
Wow.
We plant about every 2 to 3 weeks through the spring and the summer. And, here's kind of a small ear that was left behind, but I think we'll be able to see a worm in here.
Oh yeah.
There's the damage anyhow. Looks like the worm may have already left. I don't know. So this is a small ear that was left behind, but if it was a larger ear, we would just cut off that part of it, and then the rest of the ear is really fine.
Right, yeah.
So, and they taste a good way.
Yeah.
To tell if the corn's any good. If you ever want to buy a bunch of corn from a farmer, is to say, let me try some raw. And if it's tender and sweet, it's going to be good. If you bite into it and it's tough and starchy, then you walk away from it.
So you got to buy one ear at least, though, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. Knowing me, no. But
He probably wouldn't let you come in and take a bite out of his corn, though, if you didn't buy the ear.
I would.
Okay.
As a farmer, I would.
Okay. All right, Jerry, we got some questions here from the students.
Okay.
We'll go through. So Amber asked, due to our climate on the Central Coast, we normally have dramatic weather change. But when we do, when you have a big heat wave or a random rainstorm, you know, how drastically does that affect your farm?
The weather that we have around here, as she said at the beginning, isn't that drastic.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get hurricanes generally.
Yeah.
You know, along the coast here, we don't really get bad heat spells. You know, last week when it was so hot, you know, maybe it got up to 80 here. And the smoke was by far the worst thing, which was pretty awful. But, you know, you know, we had one winter where we had a hard freeze and we lost a lot of our crops for about 3 months. But then, you know, they come back, and we have enough diversification out here of what we grow that if we have some really hot weather in the summer, hey, the corn and tomatoes are going to, and the sweet potatoes are going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Maybe the lettuce and celery might get into some trouble for a short time, but other crops will do fine. And in the winter time, we generally grow things that can withstand, you know, cold temperatures and rain. I suppose one of the problems is in the winter, if we get more than a couple of inches of rain in a day, because we're on sandy ground here, all the nutrients and nitrogen leach out, and the plant will turn yellow because it's not getting enough nitrogen food. And so we have to kind of think about that ahead of time to try to keep some fertilizer, you know, right there. So even if we get rain, there will be fertilizer available in a week or so for the plant to use, so it won't turn yellow. So it's a lot of forward planning for that, because typical conventional or inorganic fertilizers, you can take them and just spread them on top of the ground, and they'll become water soluble immediately and immediately available to the plant. So you can kind of combat, you know, a lot of rain by using those things, whereas with organic fertilizers, you really have to think about it a couple of weeks ahead of time. And most organic fertilizers work they have to be basically broken down or digested by the microorganisms that are in the ground. So if I put out chicken manure at any time of the year, the plant will kind of look at it and say, I don't see this as anything that I can use, you know, the raw chicken manure or compost or anything like that. So that chicken manure or compost has to be eaten by the microorganisms that are in the ground, hopefully, and then it's broken down to a compound that the plants can utilize as plant food. But raw chicken manure, the plant really can't use it.
They can't do that.
It doesn't know what to do with it. Okay, so in the summer, that's not a big problem because the microorganisms are working 24/7. You know, you put down your fertilizer and basically in a week, the microorganisms have taken it and broken it down to a form that the plants can use very quickly because the ground's warm, the air temperature is warm. But in the winter, when the ground is very cold, the microorganisms are still there in the ground, but they're working very slowly. You know, and it will take a long time for, you know, a chunk of chicken manure to get broken down by the microorganisms and to put into a form that the plant can use. So that's where, when the soils are cold and wet, sometimes it's very challenging for organic farmers.
Do you find the fish emulsions a little bit easier taken up by the plants?
A little bit,
not much.
Still, it still needs to be converted.
It does, okay.
It still needs to go through that conversion process.
Okay.
Because you put raw fish emulsion down, and the plant again doesn't really know what to do with it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So we live in a nice area. That's the gist of that answer. All right. Here's a question from Ashley. She asked, was there any difficult starting up the farm, and if so, how did you overcome them? What was the most difficult problem you encountered, would you say, starting the farm up?
Difficult thing. When I came into this farm, it had been farmed and conventionally grown strawberries for 28 years. It had been fumigated every year with methylbromide. Basically, the soil was sterile. Okay, there were no microorganisms in the soil. So I would plant crops, and there were no weeds either. Not a weed on the farm.
That must have been nice, though.
Okay, it was nice for a while. I had a nice little honeymoon there until, you know, eventually weed seed blew in, and then it would grow, and then I wasn't quite as diligent as I should be, and the weed multiplied, you know, the seeds, and then now we have lots of weed seeds everywhere. So for the first couple of years, it was like the guys didn't know what to do. I'd send them out to hoe a field, and there were no weeds to be hoed. But when I would try to put down my organic fertilizer, the plants would not respond to it.
There was
because
no microbes.
There are no microbes in the ground. So again, over time, especially using the cover crops, you know, that I'd work back in, and those would help to bring the microorganisms back into sync again. And so that was kind of challenging. I mean, it was both good and bad. No weeds, but I was having a heck of a time trying to get my fertilizers to work. And there were some crops that I would grow for the first 2 or 3 years. No matter what I did, I could not grow an onion or a leek out here. I would plant the plant. It would start to grow, and it would just die. And what I found out is a lot of the herbicides that the grower had been using for strawberries also killed things in the leek and onion family.
Interesting.
So we had a residual amount that was left over in the soil.
And that took a couple of years to clear out?
That took a couple of years to clear it out.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah. But now, you know, we don't see that at all. We don't see those issues at all. We just see lots of weeds.
Very interesting. Cool. So the soil health is doing much better now.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, cool. All right. Keandra asks, how would Mr. Rutiz recommend that we try and live off our own foods such as this? How can we try and start effectively produce our own food in the manner that he has? So, you know, backyard gardeners and things like that, how would you recommend that they do sustainable agriculture?
Just try to begin with, get your soil as healthy as you can. You know, work compost into it before you plant. And try to plant things within season. So, you know, in the summertime, you would plant your tomatoes, corn, squashes, things like that. And in the wintertime, in our area, stick to the broccoli, cauliflowers, Brussels sprouts, kale, chard. So grow things within season. Grow things that you like to eat. There's no sense in growing kale if you don't like kale. You know, what are you gonna do?
Sure.
So, you know, pick things that you like to eat. Grow small amounts of it. You know, unless you're willing to feed your whole neighborhood. You know, 3 squash plants zucchini plants will give you more than enough zucchini for your household
And the neighbors.
and the neighbors. So don't plant too much at any one time.
Sure.
And keeping it small, and yeah, just grow things that you like to grow. I mean, growing plants is not rocket science, okay? Plants have been growing on their own for millions of years.
Sure.
And without any intervention from us, and they've been doing really pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, you know, we're trying to do something a little bit different than nature out here, but still, plants, you know, if you give them a nice soil environment, you keep them watered correctly, you give them nice fertilizer a little bit at a time, not a lot of fertilizer, because even organic fertilizers, they can tend to burn up plants.
Mm-hmm.
If you put them on too heavy or at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
So put in small amounts all the time, and just pay attention to your plants. I mean, I think the biggest problem with people with their home gardens is you know, on a hot day, they want to sit inside with their air conditioner, and they don't really pay attention to what's happening to their plant out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to go out there and look at that plant every day, and what are the needs of that plant? Does it need water today? If it needs water today, don't wait till tomorrow. Give
Mm-hmm.
it water today.
Mm-hmm.
If it needs a fertilizer program, get the fertilizer on fast, because a lot of these plants are really growing fast, especially in the summertime. And you know, there's a small window of opportunity when the fertilizer is going to be beneficial to them.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to put a lot of fertilizer on when the plants are very small, like a field over there, it really isn't going to do any good, because the plant doesn't need fertilizer when it's small. It needs very little fertilizer. When it needs most of the fertilizer is right at this stage, when it's starting to be a bigger plant, when it's got a lot of foliage on it, when it's going to start producing green beans here in a couple of weeks. You know, you need to make sure you've got fertilizer and water on it. You can't stress that plant,
Mm-hmm.
because it will be here and gone, you know, basically in 5 to 6 weeks. It'll be finished.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sitting there not paying attention to it, you've missed that opportunity. So it's just watching what you're doing, paying attention to your plants, and keeping them happy. Water, fertilizer, and for the most part, if you keep a healthy plant, the bugs and the diseases will not be a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's when that plant gets stressed for whatever reason that the bugs will hone in on that stressed plant and cause a lot of problems. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a nice vigorously growing plant and it's happy and it has what it needs, even if the bugs come along, they might eat a little bit, but they're not going to cause such a big problem.
Right. Yeah, that's good advice. All right. So Kaya asks about pesticides, right? So we already talked about how you don't use pesticides.
Yeah, we just don't use any. I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be spraying them. I don't care what it is. I don't really want to subject myself to them. I don't want to have to go home at night and have my family tell me, take off all your clothes before you come in the house, you stink, you know, from pesticides.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be doing it, and I am able, in our climate here, we're very blessed with a very mild climate. We don't have a lot of disease or bug problems, so I really find myself not needing to spray. Now, if I was farming, you know, in Iowa or something like that, I'm not sure that I could do what I'm doing here in Iowa, because the weather conditions are very different. But here we have very mild summers, very mild winters, and the pests are not a big problem here, really.
All right. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. Since there are no pesticides used on any crops, do they grow different sizes or take longer to grow than some place that might be using pesticides?
No.
I think it's about the same.
Yeah, they grow. I mean, when you plant the seed of a given crop, like corn or something like that, it's pretty much in 90 to 100 days, you better have that corn ready to go, because the plant is going to be done growing.
Okay.
I mean, that's the genetics of the plant. So what we find is if we try to plant corn in the early spring before the ground really warms up well, yeah, we'll plant and the corn will come up, but it'll just kind of sit there and sit there and not really grow because it can't get access to nutrients because the ground's too cold. Then come about beginning of May, it'll send up the tassel when the corn is about that big.
Oh, no kidding.
And the ear will be about that big.
Okay.
And it probably won't be worthwhile.
Okay.
So again, planting in season, you know, the plants will do better, and they have a given amount of time. The same thing with broccoli or cauliflower. If you plant them and, you know, in 110 days, that plant is going to be pretty much done growing, regardless of whether you get a nice big head of cauliflower or a little tiny head of cauliflower.
Okay. So pesticides aren't going to increase your growth rate or do anything like that?
Not really. It just keeps the bugs off.
Keeps the bugs off. Okay.
And really, in the produce business that we're in, I would say 90% of the pesticides that are used for cosmetic purposes to keep that last bug hole off the head of lettuce. Not that, you know, not that you can't harvest the head of lettuce, but you're going to keep that last bug hole from being on there. And that's what the majority of it is. Now the crops that are growing, you know, in other areas, you know, your corn and your wheat, your cotton, soybeans and stuff like that, you know, it's a bit of another story. And I really don't have that much experience with those crops, but I know that those are harder to grow without pesticides, I think.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your hot houses here, or hoop houses.
We call these hoop houses, and again, as you can see, they're open on the sides. So they don't provide a whole lot of heat issue increase. During a sunny day, if we walked in there, it might be 5 to 10 degrees warmer in there. But for raspberries, and that's what we have in here, that's just enough increase in heat to make them produce better. Okay. The main thing it does for us is it keeps the dew off of the plants. In the morning, we get a lot of fog here, and a normal morning, if they weren't covered with the hoop houses, you'd go in there and the leaves and the fruit would be all wet from the fog and the mist and the dew, and that would cause a lot more disease issues when the plant is wet all the time. So by having these up, we're able to keep the plant dry during the summertime when we're mostly picking. So these are kind of finishing up the season on our raspberries. Our raspberries are usually those, I don't know if they'll taste that great. Those look a little dried out, but you can try one.
I'll try one.
But they're kind of finishing up now for the season.
Pretty good.
It's, I don't know, hoop houses are kind of another double-edged sword that I think personally they're ugly. But in order for me to grow raspberries on this farm, we needed to have a little bit extra heat.
Okay.
In the winter time, the raspberries, of course, are not growing, they're dormant, so it really doesn't matter that you have these up or you don't have them up. In fact, most years we'll actually pull the plastic down in the winter time to let the rain come in and, and clean out the ground to leach out the salts in the ground. So in the winter time, they really don't do any good. In fact, if you had these up in the winter, you'd actually find in the early morning it will be colder inside of a hoop house than it is outside, because of the way the air circulation works. Is out here we would have airflow moving back and forth at night and early morning, keeping it a little bit warmer, and here the airflow would be stopped, and it would tend to get cold. So here's kind of a good example. These are peppers, and if you notice how large these pepper plants are, and very you know, a lot of foliage, a lot of peppers are on there. And this is growing in the hoop house. Again, the peppers like a little bit more heat than we would normally have outside here. So this was, this field was planted, and we'll look at another field over here.
Okay.
Here, this is a great example. These are what we call pasilla pepper. Okay.
Okay.
And if you can look at this is the pasilla pepper growing inside the hoop house. A little bit warmer,
Okay.
a little bit more controlled environment. Okay, we're gonna walk over here and we're gonna look at a pasilla pepper field that is growing outside. And the pasilla peppers are gonna be much smaller. Same plant, same seeds. This is tomatoes here. So this is going to be our late tomatoes. Hopefully
okay.
we'll be harvesting tomatoes here for Christmas.
Nice.
So that's what we hope for. So here is the outdoor grown pasilla pepper. You can see the plants are not as large, and you can see this is about the biggest one we're going to get from outside here.
Okay.
And this was an average size one for inside the hoop house.
Interesting.
And these are a little bit darker in color. You know, just that they're growing a little bit slower out here because they're exposed to more of the elements. So, but the thing is, for us, we can market both of them.
Sure.
And normally I wouldn't put peppers in there, but we just happen to have the space available, so I thought I'd put them in.
And do you notice any heat difference in the pepper itself, outside or inside?
Not really. We have jalapenos right here, and I don't really eat jalapenos. They're too hot for me, but my field workers, they like to take them home, and they tell me that they really don't see a whole lot of difference between the ones that are growing in there and the ones that are growing out here.
Okay.
They seem to, I think that's more of a varietal issue. So here are, this is what we call our summer planted strawberry. And you can see these plants are much more
fantastic,
much more vigorous.
Look at the size of those strawberries.
Yeah. So we'll be picking them here tomorrow.
Nice.
And the bees are enjoying the flowers.
And how long will you let it harvest this one?
This one will have probably till you know, Thanksgiving. We'll be harvesting from here.
That's great. That's fantastic. And my wife told me to get 3 baskets of strawberries. Don't come home without them.
No. I may have to come back out here and pick.
Uh-oh, are y'all done?
Yeah, the stand closed at 4.
Oh, did it?
Okay, so here's your proverbial zucchini plant, which we have plenty of.
Yeah, look at the size of that zucchini.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, they grow fast. And here's more peppers. So this is, we planted peppers 3 times, so this is the last field.
Okay.
So we should have these peppers for Thanksgiving time for harvest.
Okay.
And you know, here's a newly planted field. Here's, I don't know if you can pick this up on your camera, but so this is beets, and we hand pulled the weeds out to about 1/3 of the way into the field, and then you can see it just turns into a green mess. Okay, that's weeds and beets. Okay, now what I want you to see, these are carrots here, and you can, these are planted at the same time, but you can see the carrots were torched, and there's a fraction of the amount of weeds in the carrot field. I mean, as you look down the field, you can see the rows very clearly where the carrots are, whereas the beets were not torched, and you cannot see the rows because there's so many weeds.
Yeah. Huh, that's a great example of that. Very cool.
So this, you know, we'll be able to weed this out fairly easily. Whereas the beets are a lot of work to weed out at this point. And these are artichokes here, so these are for our we'll have artichokes for harvest probably in March and April from this field.
Okay.
So they take a long time to grow.
And when were these planted?
These were planted about 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
And these are a plant we call kaleettes. and it's a cross between kale and Brussels sprouts.
Really?
And they're really a fun thing to eat.
Huh.
They're kind of finicky to grow. Not many people grow them, but so you pick them. You pick them like a Brussels sprout, except they're like, each one is like a little miniature kale plant.
Huh.
And you can kind of quick fry them, and they're really good. You know, and then these are just your standard Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had the
Kale,
that
yeah.
kale,
so we usually have them from about Thanksgiving to mid-February or so. So it's a fairly short season.
Okay.
And then
cool.
here's this is delicata squash, and it's, you know, maturing out. That's about as big as you're going to get. So have you had delicata before?
I'm not sure.
What's nice about it, it's a winter squash, so it stores well. You don't have to refrigerate it, and you can eat the skin.
Oh,
so what I
okay.
like to do is I'll take it and cut it into like rings, and then scoop out the center where the seed cavity is, and then you drizzle some olive oil and seasoning, put them in the oven, roast them in the oven for about 25-30 minutes, and they come out kind of like an onion ring.
Oh, really?
And they're really delicious. Kids love them.
Huh, I have to try that one.
And here's our late basil field here. And you can see a gopher trap set up there. The gopher ate a bunch of basil plants last night, I guess. So we put a gopher trap.
Oh yeah, you're
out
missing
yeah,
4 or 5 in a row there.
Yeah. Yeah, they do that quickly.
Yeah. Constant battle with the gophers out here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have lots of traps all the time set up. So we just trap them, and you know, normally we can keep them under control, but they're always there because we have a very unique system. This is gopher heaven out here, because even though we might finish up a field, you know, and disc it up, and there will be nothing there, but all the gopher has to do is to hike over, you know, 30, 40, 50 feet, and he's into a nice lush growing field where there's lots of, the sand is nice and moist again, and he can make his tunnels. So they're constantly moving from one place to another, whereas if a farmer were to have taken this whole place and just farmed it all at one time, like in strawberries or broccoli, at the end of that crop he will come in and all the plants will be gone for a few months, and the gophers will have no place to hang out. There will be nothing for them to eat, so they will tend not to be here as much, whereas we just provide, you know, a smorgasbord for the gophers all the time, that there's always something. They may just have to move a few feet over, and they're going to find a nice succulent plant sitting there for them.
Yep. Gophers. I remember I had a raised bed garden and had gopher wire on the bottom of it, and they would climb over the top of that raised bed and get into the garden. I was like, really?
They want that stuff.
They do like that stuff.
So we'll catch pretty much year round. I have a guy that spends about an hour every morning doing his gopher traps, going around and checking them, and he'll get 3 to 4 gophers every night.
Wow.
I mean, this is year round.
Yeah.
And you know, if we didn't do that, we'd be overrun with gophers. So we're back to the pumpkin field here.
Oh yeah, it's the opposite end of the pumpkin patch. No more pig experiment?
No, I decided I'm not a pig person.
You're not a pig person?
Yeah, the pigs really, I don't know. We tried breeding them a couple of times and had a couple of litters, and if we had 1 or 2 piglets that survived, we were doing good.
Okay.
So it was nothing I really want to do.
Okay.
This is our fertilizer here. So this is how we buy our fertilizer.
This is the chicken.
This is the chicken manure.
Chicken manure.
So you can kind of see, if you want to take a little picture of the label there.
Okay.
So it's certified organic. Its analysis is 444, and it's got calcium and magnesium in it too. And it's what they would call composted chicken manure. So It's supposed to be composted, heated up through composting, and that's supposed to, if it's done correctly, gets rid of the pathogens that might be in the chicken manure, so I can apply this directly to growing crops. If I were to take chicken manure from my own chickens that's non-composted, I have to wait, I don't know, probably 4 to 5 months before I would harvest anything from that field, because the thought is that there are pathogens that might be in there that could spread to the growing plants, and they don't want me to harvest anything for you know, pathology reasons. But this is composted, so I can put this right on stuff that maybe we'd be harvesting in a few weeks if I wanted to.
Cool.
And so this is our main source of fertilizer. Here we go through, I buy about a truckload, about 22 tons every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
22 tons. Wow.
That's what we use out here.
That's a lot of weight. Well, the sand or the soil that you have here, which really is sand, is just not the best for growing things in, really, right?
I wouldn't quite put it not the best. It's just challenging. I mean, it's great in the winter when you get lots of rain, that it drains right through and you don't have mud on your boots. And you can plant right after a rainstorm or during a rainstorm, whereas if you had clay ground, you know, once it rains, you're kind of locked out of it for a while. So here, I mean, it's just like the beach. You know, you can go walking right after a rainstorm. It's nice and firm and everything. During the summer, it requires more water more frequently because the ground doesn't hold water very well. But we've kind of figured that out, how to make it work. And the nutrients, you just have to put less nutrients, less fertilizer in at any given time. Then, you know, if you put a lot of fertilizer in at one time, it'll go into solution eventually, and then it'll leach out through the ground. So we just have to kind of spoon feed everything out here. Here's our chickens.
Why?
And
how many do you have right now?
Oh, I think there's around 70 or
70,
so.
okay. Wow.
Different breeds. So we have them all for eggs. And they get to eat a lot of they get a lot of corn trimmings. You know, when we cut the worms off the tip, they love the worms. But we also supplement them with a feed. We use a non-GMO feed, so it's mostly made out of rice and wheat, rather than most chicken feeds are made out of corn and soy. But it's very hard to get non-GMO corn and soy, because most of the corn and soy that's grown in this country is from GMO seeds. So then you would have to buy organic feed, which is very, very expensive. Whereas a non-GMO feed, it's not necessarily organic, but it's not using GMOs. And that seemed to be what our customers are more concerned about, is that if we're feeding them corn or soy that's from a GMO plant, then they're taking in that chemical composition into their bodies, and then we're taking the eggs from them, so the eggs conceivably could have some issues with that. So I don't know. That's what we do.
Cool.
But they get a lot of scraps from the farm.
Yeah, I bet they do.
They eat pretty well.
It's a good reuse of things that otherwise, once again, just be waste or thrown away.
And here's an example of many of our plants that we grow. I give the seed to a nursery close by, and they will put them into these plugs here, and then we'd plant. This happens to be broccoli here. So it's kind of an easy way to plant it. And by planting a plant, this is probably about a 4-week-old plant here, 4 or 5-week-old plant, and so we don't. That would be one less weeding in the field because we're planting something that's already 4 or 5 weeks old, and less watering, less fertilizing, things like that. So we find that this is kind of a good option to use for a lot of the seed. Also, some of the seed is very expensive seed, and this way each seed, you know, we're utilizing it rather than just spreading it out in the field and you know, having to thin it out afterwards and lose a lot of plants. So we'll do this with broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, tomatoes, peppers. We'll start plants.
Cool. All right. Well, that's about it, Jerry. We did a full tour there, I think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, did you have a chance to shoot the stand at all?
Yeah, I did. When I got here, I went around, took some good video of that.
Good. That's good. So they get an idea of what it looks like.
Yeah, so I got a really good idea about that.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Jerry, and I think the students will enjoy watching the video there. So thanks a bunch.
Okay. So.